Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm reviewing Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, and I gave this book a solid 4 out of 5. My Booktuber shout today goes out to Ellie Rose Reads. I came across her YouTube channel when I was checking out Booktube newbie tags. She has actually been around for a year now on Booktube and consistently uploads, so she definitely deserves more support from us, so I'll link her channel down below. And as always, before I go into my full book review, if you're watching this video, I'll appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and comment down below if you have read this book so I can hear what you thought of it, or if you have read any of his other works, I'd love to hear which ones you recommend. This book, Under the Whispering Door, was published in 2021, so pretty recently, and the genre I would put it in is fantasy and also LGBTQ+. A bit about the author TJ Klune. So I actually have reviewed his other book, House on the Cerulean Sea, and unfortunately I haven't found too many facts about him that's different from that video, so I'm probably repeating myself a lot. So he was born in Oregon, Pacific Northwest represent, because I was born in Vancouver, Canada, and he started writing very young at the age of 8 years old, doing fan fiction, and was supported by his teachers as well at a very young age. He is an American author, and he identifies as queer, and he really feels passionate about writing more accurate depiction and representation of people in the queer community. He's very open in his asexuality, his queerness, and also his neurodiversity. And I think when you read his stories, you can really see that these people from these marginalized communities are represented in his stories, and that's really nice to see. He has written a few series books, however, a lot of his books, like The House on the Cerulean Sea and Under the Whispering Door, are standalone books, which I really appreciate because I'm not like a very heavy fantasy reader, and the reason why I kind of like steer away from fantasy is I don't really want to commit to the 4 books or 9 books of a series. However, I still enjoy fantasy, so I really enjoy that he's able to have really fleshed out worlds in a standalone single book. Now to get into the story and the premise of the book. So basically we start with meeting Wallace Price. He is a partner at a law firm, and he just seems to be insufferable. He seems to be not a great boss. There's a lot of empathy, and that you get painted a picture of him really quickly that he's not like a great person. And shortly, right away, he is dead. This is not a spoiler because it happens literally within the first like 2 chapters, and he meets May, who is the Reaper, and she brings him to this tea shop called the Kron Tea Shop, and there he meets Hugo, who is the ferryman. So the job of May and Hugo is he's in this in-between, and to help him get ready and move on to the next step, which is passing through the Whispering Door, which is on the top floor of the cafe, is in the ceiling. So you actually are literally under the Whispering Door. So this book talks about how Wallace, wasn't a good person when he was alive, and now he's dead, and he meets these wonderful people. He meets May, the Reaper, Hugo, the ferryman, Nelson, who is also a ghost like Wallace, but he is staying at the tea shop because he's Hugo's grandpa, and basically talks about how May and Hugo kind of like chip away at Wallace's like tough personality, and show him how to be nice, to be empathetic, and how he has his journey. And this book just talks about like what it means to die, what it means to have lived well, what it means to have kind of this redemption period of your life where you want to be able to be the best human you can be before you go to the next chapter, which is the Whispering Door. Common themes I learned in this book, or I noticed, is the idea of death. Like, what if you died and you meet like the Reaper and the Ferryman, and they're here to help you, move on to the next phase in being a human? Do you think you'll gracefully accept that, like, yeah, I'm actually ready to die, and go to the Whispering Door, or you're like, no, I do not? And like, it's interesting because this book kind of talks about like you don't know what's going to be on the other side of the Whispering Door, and it seems like it's always something good, but it also seems so final. And like, it kind of reminds me of The Good Place, if you've seen that show, where they're living in the good place, and then at some point they walk through the door. It's just like a very interesting way, because like, what about, it makes me think about like, how about right now in our world, our reality, we don't get to choose when we die, But what we did, and like if we did, how long will people live for until they feel like they're ready to go to the next step, the great unknown? I don't know. It's just very interesting. This book was very like made me think a lot about death and like that kind of stuff. Other common theme motives is the importance of having community. As I mentioned, Wallace Price at the beginning, he was very alone, very insufferable, was not a nice person. And in this tea shop, the Kron tea shop, he becomes a nice person. He has his community where, you know, it's kind of hard to say goodbye. And like once you have that, it's very beautiful. So the importance of building a community. Things I didn't like about this book, as I did give it a 4 out of 5. So I did think it was a little predictable, which was surprising because it is an adult book, not a young adult's book. And yeah, it was just really surprising for me. I'm also not a fantasy reader, so take this next criticism with a grain of salt. I know it's a standalone book, so it's hard to flesh out worlds sometimes, but I felt like the logic of the world didn't make a lot of sense or is kind of inconsistent. So I guess that's why a lot of fantasy are usually series, because you're able to flesh out logic and rationale a bit more. Things I did like about this book was I like how the start of the book, it really was very quickly able to paint this whole picture of Wallace Price before he died, and you know also after he died, how he was able to grow through the book. I really enjoyed being along the journey of Wallace Price. I also love the side characters, May, Nelson, and Apollo, and then the main character Hugo. And I also really enjoyed the idea of the tea shop, the Kron Cafe, being a character in itself, being this little town, having all these regulars, and I just really loved it. On Goodreads, this book on average of 4.18 out of 5, which I think is a pretty decent review for being out now for a few years. So I'll start with bad reviews first. People didn't like it because they felt Wallace Price was a non-redeemable person. They didn't like that he had growth and he got the ending he got, because they felt that him when he was alive he just wasn't a good person, which I'm like, damn, that's ruthless. People also like me felt it was a bit too predictable, and people felt like me as well that it I mean, it's kind of our fault, is that we compare it to House on the Cerulean Sea, and it just wasn't as good as that book. Maybe if I read this book before Cerulean Sea, I maybe have given it 5, but because I have read House on the Cerulean Sea, this one just wasn't as good, so I was a bit disappointed. Reasons why people enjoy this book on Goodreads is they like the world building it as a standalone book. They enjoyed the characters, not so much Wallace. They also love how the whole story is mostly set in the tea house, kind of like a play, and you know they don't really like diverge to other areas of the world. And they also love the reflective nature of this book about what it means to live and to also die. I think you should read this book if you're a fan of light fantasy, discussions of death, and want more LGBTQ representation in your life. Now I'll share how this book made me feel, because I always like to ask people when they recommend me a book is how it made them feel. Because if you ask me a week, a year, 5 years from now, I probably won't remember all the details in the book, but remember how it made me feel. So this book, it made me feel very cozy. You know, it's set in a tea shop. You have this like little cast of characters that really support each other, and you see a lot of growth, and it just feels like a family. It just made me feel very cozy at the end and wanting to start a cup of tea. Thank you for watching until the end of my book review for Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. As always, if you watch until the end of this video, please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!